Just talk about it. No pressure, just dialogue. On the Tisa Batey Show. Let's just talk about it. No pressure, just dialogue. On the Tisa Batey Show. Let's just talk about it. No pressure, just dialogue. On the Tisa Batey Show. Let's just talk about it. No pressure.
What's up, sweet babies? What's going on, my sweet babies? Welcome to another episode of the Tisa Batey Show. So glad to have you here with us on this beautiful, blessed New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. Happy New Year's Eve, sweet babies. Happy New Year's Eve. Thank God. Grady, you hear me when I say thank God?
Yes.
We're here.
We made it.
2020 has been a year. You hear me?
Yes,
Thank
it has.
God. I give all thanks, praise, and glory to God that we're still here. And we certainly send up all our condolences and prayers to all those who have been lost and the families who are left to grieve the loss of loved ones. Hey, my brother Cameron. My brother Cameron Taylor just walked in the door. That's my boo-boo right there. I'm just thankful. I'm thankful to be here. But guys, listen, I'm going to tell you this. If you have never shared a podcast before, share this one. If you have never called people on the phone to say, the Tisa Batey Show is on live, whether they watch it on Facebook or my YouTube channel, this is one of those episodes that you definitely want to make sure that you do that.
Yes.
I would venture to say that this is probably the most serious and sensitive podcast that we've done. And I'll go one further and say probably will ever do. Because we're going to talk about molestation. We're going to talk about incest. We're going to talk to a woman that I have to tell you, I have such a deep respect for and admiration for, because she is courageous enough to come out and say, this is what happened to me. This is what happened to my family. This is my story. And for no other reason other than to help somebody else, I'm willing to tell my story. And this is the very first time she has ever spoken publicly about her life as a wife of a molester. And so if you have never, ever shared a Tisa Batey podcast, if you have never encouraged other people to tune in and view this podcast, this is the one that they need to see. So I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes to do that. I want everybody to share this, not only share this, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that you can share mine. So let me make sure, because we are live, let me make sure that the podcast is, let me edit my privacy. Bam, there it is. So if you want to share my podcast now, it is now public. I don't know why Facebook keeps kicking it out to only friends because I posted this
Yeah.
post.
You got to go in your settings and change it. It's okay.
I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I was
that,
having that same issue too.
and that's why you're you, the great producer, and I'm me. And that's
That's
what
right.
makes this world go round.
We
Yeah.
all learn. I learned that this year. So you learned this at the end of the year. So you
You
got it.
learned
You
it
got
this
this,
year.
Tisa.
You learned it this year,
I
DJ.
learned that this year.
Wow, wow, and wow. So
Yeah.
listen, guys, again, um, the harsh reality is this. All of us probably know of someone, or even if you know of someone who knows of someone who has dealt with molestation, incest in their lifetimes. If you know of someone who has dealt with this, share this podcast with them. Call them on the phone and say, tune in to the Tisa Batey show. They're talking about molestation. They're talking about incest. Please don't just keep this podcast to yourselves, because this podcast, I am absolutely positive, is going to bless the masses, and it's going to set a lot of people free. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, when they're going through things, they feel like they're the only ones. It's a very isolating feeling. And I have a young lady here who is willing to say, and shout from the mountaintops, you're not alone. I've been through it. And when you hear her story, it's so incredibly impactful that not only is it going to touch you, it's going to bless you to see where she's been and where she is now. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome to the show. And I'm so excited to have her. Her name is Rose Shavi, or Shavi Hayes Brown. And we're so honored and so just glad to have you on the show today. This is the first time that she has spoken publicly, and I am just honored that she chose my platform to do so. So welcome, Rose. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We're glad to have you. We're absolutely glad to have you. I know that this is going to be difficult for you. She has already said that she is not really comfortable speaking in a public forum. So I've just told her to make sure that she's comfortable, and this is just girl talk. You know, just pretend it's just me and you.
What about me?
Me, you,
and
DJ Grady, babe.
he, me, and she. I just say, what are we gonna do? We're gonna talk about it. Baby.
We're gonna talk about it.
We're just gonna talk about it.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna talk
about it. Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do, I'm doing a segment on this topic, and the topic is married to a molester. And we're going to do a 3-part series. This first series is going to be entitled The Marriage. So I want to ask Rose, if she will, to just take us back to when they first met, the courtship, what it was she saw in him, the marriage, all that good stuff. I want her to just feel free to flow. And we're going to talk about that in this series. The next series, part 2, will be the molestation. And this molestation, there are different molestations. There are different, versions of incest and molestation. But this particular one was Rose's husband, who molested their actual daughter, his physical daughter.
My ex-husband.
Your Rose's ex. I stand corrected.
Yes.
I stand corrected. Thank you so much, Rose. Her ex-husband, who molested their daughter, their biological daughter. and that's going to be in segment 2, but we will get into some of that today. And then segment 3, I just want to talk about how victorious she is and how she's been able to overcome such a tragedy in her life. So Rose, if you don't mind, please take me and the viewers back to the beginning. How did you meet him? Just take us back to day one.
Day one, I met him in high school. We weren't high school sweethearts or anything like that. However, he stood out to me. And the reason he stood out to me was because he was so unique. He was so beautiful and he was so different. What I noticed most about him was he was God-fearing. We were in math class together. We joked a lot. We became friends on an intimate level, not on a sexual level initially. I was able to tell him some things that I was going through at that time during my adolescent years. And he was mature beyond his age. He was very spiritually mature, and that drew me to him. As the years progressed, or as that particular year progressed from the day that I met him, we obviously did become intimate, and we conceived our first daughter.
And how old were you at this time?
At the time, I was 17.
Gotcha.
We became the very best of friends, very best of comrades. He was just so different during that time, and he had a light, and it was very alluring. It was just very beautiful because you just didn't see that, you know. So that was what attracted me to him. He had a lot of respect. He played basketball. He had a lot of friends, and he was a stand-up guy. When he found out that I was pregnant, I had moved from my hometown. And when I moved from my hometown to Atlanta, he knew I was pregnant, but he didn't know that I was pregnant with his child.
Okay, so let me stop you there. So when you met him, you guys are not originally from Atlanta.
We're not.
Okay, so you guys are from somewhere else, and then you relocated to Atlanta.
I relocated to Atlanta once I got pregnant, and I never told him that I was pregnant.
Gotcha. Okay.
So once we relocated to Atlanta, and after I delivered my daughter, I called him to tell him that I had her. And interesting enough, that was his first and only encounter sexually. So he did doubt that this child was his initially.
Let me ask you this, Rose. Why did you wait until after you had the child, if I may ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
To tell him that you were actually pregnant. Why not tell him initially when you found out?
Because to be perfectly honest, I wasn't sure that it was his child.
Gotcha.
I was just I had just gotten out of another relationship, and I wasn't sure.
Gotcha.
Once the baby was born, it was quite evident based on her race that it was his.
And you say based on her race because your ex-husband is?
He is a quarter Black and 75% white.
Gotcha.
His appearance is definitely Caucasian.
Gotcha.
So it was quite apparent that she was not an African-American baby.
Gotcha.
Once I had her, I notified him that, she in fact was his. And then it took a few months, and then he came up to visit her and, agreed that, this was his child. and immediately did the right thing. He enrolled into the military and wanted to be a part of her life. We had never been a couple. We had only been friends. So at that time, when he enrolled into the military, and after my child was born, we started to pursue a relationship romantically at that time. So it was actually probably about 7 months before he physically met her. And when he first met her, he fell in love with her. She was a carbon copy of him and his family. Just a beautiful baby, and he was ready to step into the position even at that young age to do exactly what he felt was right at that time to financially take care of his child.
So let me ask you this. At this particular time, he was in the military. You were here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you guys decide we're getting married? At what point did you guys become, a unified couple where you all lived together? Did he move to Atlanta? Did you move to where he was? Tell us about how that went.
Sure. So once we decided we were going to be a couple, I moved from Atlanta back to my hometown. When I moved back to my hometown, he then went into the military, went off to boot camp, things of that nature. I believe before boot camp, we got married though.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we got married before he went into boot camp. So I was actually 19 at the time when we.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what you have something to say, Grady?
Yeah, I was going to ask. During that brief moment in time, have you got to know his parents, relatives, and stuff like that?
I did. His family, and initially it wasn't. I would just say the mother wasn't very welcoming. She was very skeptical about, just the fact that I had never been around, and here I am popping up saying, "Hey, this kid is yours,"
Mm-hmm.
as any mother would be, but once she saw the baby, she came to the realization that this is blood of my blood and flesh of my flesh here. So let me just go ahead and get on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. What was it? Because, women, we can be very particular, and men alike, I guess. But what was it that made you go from, having a relationship where, you consider this man just a friend, where you had, a very intimate sexual relationship with him, or at least an encounter with him at one period of time in your life? What was it that made you go from feeling those feelings towards him to actually saying, this is the man I want to spend the rest of my life with, and falling in love with him?
He was so young to be ready to assume the responsibility. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to be a single mother after my daughter was conceived. I wasn't expecting, to have him hop on board and want to be a father to his child, let alone, be in my life full time. That was something I wasn't expecting. And I found that was just very admirable at his age. So, that being said, that definitely changed my heart. And it was just at the time, honestly, it was just the way that he was loving his daughter. Like, she just became his most prized possession. And I was in love with her, and I was in love with him, and I was in love with everything about us. I just thought it was beautiful. Gotcha.
Okay, so if you can, Talk to us about the marriage. Talk to us about how it started out, about how he made you feel in the beginning, and then talk to us about when things began to change. Did
Oh,
you?
the red flags.
Yeah. Did you know?
There's certain subtle things that you see in
Right.
between.
Right. Were there any red flags? I mean, talk to us about that.
Yeah, there weren't any red flags initially during that courtship and the engagement and leading to the marriage. Let me back up. No, that's not true.
Okay.
There was a particular incident where I had gone out on a double date with my best friend. We had gone out to dinner and then we went to the beach. This was before we got married. And I had not seen my best friend because I had moved to Atlanta. I hadn't seen her probably in about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. We went to the beach that night. And she just happened to bring up, we were just catching up and speaking about, this and that. When you get together with your friends, you want to catch up, you want to talk about old times, reminisce, things of that nature. So she made a comment about a past relationship that I had been in. And I kind of laughed it off. And I was like, girl, that's old news or whatever. And that was the very first time that I felt like I didn't know him, because he literally, at that moment, we were walking on the beach, all four of us. And he literally at that moment pushed me into the water aggressively as we were
in front of everybody, in front of everyone,
in front of my best friend, in front of her significant other. He pushed me into the water and he told me he didn't think that was funny and that I was being disrespectful. And he started, grabbing me by my arms and just treating me very aggressively. And
what was the reaction? What was the reaction of your friends at that time?
Yeah.
We had never seen him act that way before. It behooved us. We were completely shocked. We didn't know. We were just like, wow, where is this coming from? So that was the first incident of many more that were completely dysfunctional. That was the very first. I was embarrassed. I had to get in the car dripping wet. He did, apologize and of course went back into his normal role of being, the guy that I thought I knew, but that was the very first red flag.
Yeah. The guy plays the representative. I call that the representative role because he wants you to be. He wants to be what he needs to be to get where he want to be. So yeah, they're right there. Now to me, are him revealing himself, and he just snapped out of it. Okay, let me fix my shirt. Let me get myself together. And
what I have learned is this. People can only hide who they truly are for so long.
Yes.
And I don't know why so many of us refuse to deal with that and really acknowledge that. I understand that, men and women alike, you always want to put your best foot forward, especially when you're embarking upon a new relationship. You always want to present yourself as flawless. That right there is the first sign. Okay. Let me just say it's the first sign. I have truly learned the value of showing you the good, the bad, and the ugly up front so that you can make an informed decision as to how you want to proceed. Because anything other than that, putting that best foot forward and putting up this facade that, you can't maintain, you can put your best foot forward if you choose to. Both feet belong to you. So it's your choice. But only put that best foot forward if you know that you're going to be able to sustain and maintain that same image. And many people just cannot do that. They fall short. They fall off the wagon. For some people, it's a matter of months. For some people, it's a matter of years. Typically, it's when the other person has already fallen in love with them and have made the decision that they're completely committed to the relationship and they're going to do whatever it takes to make it work. So I get that. I get what you're saying. But talk to me, Rose, about when things after that point, after the I'm sorries, talk to me about when things really started to change and what that looked like and how you felt as a result of that.
So things really progressively started to take a nosedive when we left Florida, and he finished boot camp out in Texas. We went to Wichita Falls, Texas. He finished boot camp. I then flew up there with my daughter. We were going to be there for approximately about 4 to 6 months before, we were put at our place of housing somewhere else, permanent, housing.
Sure.
So when I arrived in Wichita Falls, Texas, he had been gone maybe about 2 to 3 months. And he didn't, once I got off the plane and I, took the ride, over to the Air Force Base and everything to meet him, he didn't like what I was wearing.
What were you wearing? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I was wearing like this little windbreaker. It was a windbreaker jacket with like a sports bra underneath it. The windbreaker was, it was zipped up. And then I had like on a tennis skirt, but it wasn't a short tennis skirt. That's what was in style. I had on some tennis shoes. It was a long flight. I had my daughter. She was, we were there to see him. I hadn't seen him in a while. I'm now the wife. So of course we've been away from each other. And I felt like, I wanted to look good, when he saw me again. And he wasn't pleased. He kind of scolded me about what I was wearing. That was odd as well, because that's just who I was. I was just someone who, I've always kind of been a curvy woman, and I've embraced it, and that's just who I was. And I wasn't.
What was his problem with what you were wearing? Were you revealing too much, or?
He felt like, being a married woman, I should not have been wearing that. Particularly being his wife, I should not be wearing that. It wasn't wholesome enough for him. It didn't represent him. And so once we finally got back to the hotel where we were staying short term before we were assigned our apartment, he went through all of my clothes and we went out and bought new clothes. And this was the first time that I ever started to see this side of him. So,
wow. You know what? I'm going to say this. And the reason why I'm sort of expounding on her answers is because I really want to provide people, viewers who are listening, with the flags, the red flags, the signs of a molester or an abuser.
That's an abuser right there.
It's an abuser
right there. Yeah.
And if you don't know the signs, there are a lot of people who are going to listen to this podcast and who are going to say, wow, that's exactly how my boo or my beau did me. Like, wow, what she's saying really reflects my life. So I want you guys to know the signs. And I know that many of the signs may be different, but by and large, many of them are the same. So after that point, Rose, after, you all moved into your housing, after he went through your wardrobe, your entire wardrobe, and made you change out or buy new clothes and change out your entire wardrobe. Tell me about how that made you feel.
It made me feel really bad because I felt like I was, an individual who was perfectly capable of making decisions for myself, as far as how I would dress. And it didn't just stop with the clothes. I couldn't, at the time, I had very long hair. He didn't want anything to draw attention to anyone. So I had to wear my hair up, couldn't wear the clothes that I came with, couldn't watch certain things on TV. Couldn't
Wow.
listen
Ho,
to
ho,
that.
ho, 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 ho. What do you mean you
Wow.
couldn't watch certain things on TV? What do you mean?
Anything, yeah, anything that had any type of he would tell me certain shows weren't wholesome. It was trash TV. It was garbage. You shouldn't be watching that garbage. He would make me feel really guilty and bad about watching certain things. Let me just give you an example. If I were watching a talk show, it didn't matter what type of talk show, that was trash TV. He didn't want me watching that. He didn't want me listening to certain types of secular music. If it had any type of sexual innuendos in it, he didn't want me listening to it. For instance, TLC, which happened to be like the group back then.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember him very vividly pulling over and taking my CD and throwing it out of the window and telling me that you can't listen to that. That's garbage. It's trash. You shouldn't be feeding that to your spirit. That's an absolute.
So it's safe to
Wow.
say, it is very safe to say that for all intents and purposes, you felt like you had a true man of God.
Mm-hmm.
Was he in the ministry? Was he a minister? Was he a pastor? Was he a reverend? Was he a preacher? Or was that just his background?
That was just his background. He spoke. He was, before we got together, he was a part of the youth ministry. He was a great speaker, highly intelligent individual. And in hindsight, that is actually one of the signs. But
What do you mean that's one of the signs?
someone, and he was also very, when I say one of the signs, I mean like someone who is intelligent, someone who's charming, someone who is one way in the public and another way behind closed doors.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
The person, I have two names. My name is Rose. My first name is Rose. I was named after my father's grandmother. My middle name is Shavi. And I went through school with the name Shavi. I didn't go by Rose because back then I just felt like it was too old for me. It was too mature.
Gotcha.
So I went by my middle name, Shavi. He wouldn't let me use the name Shavi because that came with a past. So I became Rose.
What kind of past?
A past that he wasn't proud of. I was a normal. I was 17 when we met. I was a normal teenager. Nothing crazy. I wasn't, too promiscuous or anything like that. I was just a normal teenager having fun, going to parties, doing things that normal teenagers do. But because he chose to be, in the youth ministry, he just felt like the past that I had prior to him was not becoming as his wife. And that was
Wow.
used against me constantly.
Wow. And of course, I guess as a young woman, as a young new mother, new wife, you just wanted to do everything that you felt like was pleasing in the sight of your husband.
Mm-hmm.
where did this type of behavior come from? Did you learn about, or were you familiar with his upbringing or his parents? Did you see certain characteristics in him that were reflective of his parents?
Not initially, because I was younger and I didn't spend a lot of time around his family. So not initially, I didn't. I didn't actually start making the connections until he got out of the military, and we moved back to our hometown, and we temporarily lived with his parents before we attained our own place. And it all started to click then. Yeah, his parents were completely dysfunctional, and yeah,
How so? How so?
his dad was very controlling. His dad was very he was there was just a dictatorship. There was no conversation. It was just do it because I said do it and don't ask any question.
And how was his relationship with his dad?
It wasn't good. It honestly wasn't good. I mean, I watched them, at times almost come to blows over a little bit of nothing as he continued to assert himself into his manhood. I think he was just trying to, I don't know if he was trying to challenge his father or show his father. I don't know what the problem was, but the dynamics in that home were very strange. They were
How
very
was his relationship with his mom?
strange as well. And I say that because he could do no wrong where she was concerned. I raised a couple of issues and concerns that I had when we moved back from the military. He was at this time, he was physically abusive. And let me just say this, by no means am I a scary person? Am I the type of person that will go and hide or anything like that? That's just not my character. I'm a fighter. That's just what I do. My father raised me that way. And being an only girl and the baby, I was just taught to defend myself. So the most absurd thing about all of this is that he was very emotionally and psychologically abusive, and only at times was he physically abusive, but it made me physically abusive. He was a gaslighter. So he would do things. He would get in my face. He would talk to me face to face, where I could feel his breath on my face. He would headbutt me. He would grab me by my shoulders. He wouldn't let me out of the room. He would never leave marks on me, but it would enrage me. So it would always provoke me, and then I was always viewed as the villain, and he was viewed as the victim, and he was always viewed as the person that was married to the mad Black woman.
Okay.
Classic narcissistic behavior.
Exactly.
Yes, classic. Yes,
behavior.
I agree with that. Classic. But I want to, I guess, being around mental health abusers and all working in the mental health field, everybody has a trigger. What was the triggers that you think that triggered him? Was it conversations? And also, the second question: have you ever expressed disgruntled with being married, or did he feel like he was forced to marry you? What was the dialogue like with you guys?
No, he was happy. He was happily married, always and forever. He just, I've had some time to think about this. I think that there were just some things internally. I think he had a problem fitting in. He was also a racist. And
whoa. Okay. So, hold up.
Hold on, Tisa.
You're gonna have to make me understand this.
Okay.
Okay. he was married to you, and you're clearly a Black woman. You're very curvy, voluptuous, curly hair. You're Black, obviously. So I know that his physical appearance was that of a white man. But how can you say that he was racist if he married you and had a child that he seemed to love?
Yeah.
He was also Black.
It sounds completely off the wall. And I mean, I won't say daily. I will say very often I was called a nigger in my home.
Wow.
Anytime he would address people that were Black and he was speaking to me, especially if he felt like they were smarter than him, if they had a higher rank than him, if they looked better than him, if they were more achieved than him, they were niggers.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this, because as you know, if you're an octoroon, which is 1/8% Black, you're considered African American or Black.
Mm-hmm.
So was he coming from the point of view of another Black? Because it's very common that in the Black community that we passionately refer to each other as niggas. Nigga this, nigga that, nigga.
Terms of endearment.
We call each other that passionately
Yeah.
Amongst ourselves in the Black race. Not saying that I agree with it, disagree, or indifferent. That's just a fact. Did he identify with being Black? Thereby felt like he had the privilege or the permission to call you a nigger, or did he identify more with the white race?
He identified more with the white race, and anytime he would use that term, it was used to degrade. It was used to make me feel less than. It was used to be derogatory. It certainly wasn't N-I-G-G-A. It was N-I-G-G-E-R. There was a concise, very degrading tone that he would use when he would say that. He meant it to be offensive. He meant it to be degrading, and he meant it to be hurtful. And unfortunately, my children also have witnessed that behavior as well.
So how did you bounce back from that?
Hold on.
Okay, go ahead, Grady.
Now, when he said those things, was it in public, in front of other people, or just kept it in?
Never. He made sure that he maintained the most crisp, pristine image in public, always and forever. If anything ever happened, it was always me. I was always being viewed as the angry Black woman. It was everybody loved him. He could do no wrong. He was perfect.
Wow. That is my question to you is, how did you, even from the first time, and I guess it's no different than from physical abuse, like how do you bounce back from your husband, the father of your child, the man that you're laying down with every night? How do you bounce back from being called a nigger by him and feeling good about continuing or moving forward in the relationship?
I think I disconnected at some point and just started to go inward and started to internalize. And I became very robotic, emotionless, because that's just what needed to be done in order to survive that type of chaos in my life. So, I mean, as terrible as he was, he would always come back and apologize and ask for my forgiveness and buy flowers and, split back into that quote unquote wholesome role in our household that was extremely dysfunctional. But at the time, it was all I knew. So, I mean, I didn't ever.
Yeah.
So when you say it was all you knew, let me ask you this. Talk to us just briefly, if you will, about how you were raised and what your background looks like. What did you see from your parents when you were coming up as a child?
To be perfectly honest, I grew up in a pretty volatile household as well. And I think that's why I held on to that relationship, because I was a witness of a lot of physical abuse in my home. So that wasn't anything different than what I myself was experiencing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow. Wow and wow. How long were you guys married?
We were married about 7 years. We were together for about 9.
Okay.
We were together, 9 years and married for about, that doesn't even make sense. We were married for 7 years. I'm counting the years that we were friends. So.
Gotcha. And even though we're not going to be able to, of course, fully get into the molestation that took place, can you just walk us briefly through the beginning of when you feel the molestation took place with your daughter? How many children did you have together?
He's the father of all 4 of my children. We had 4 children together. And there is a documented time, and then there's a time that is in hindsight to me, where I go back and I look and I think and I have some moments that are questionable. Hindsight is always 2020. So
Talk to us about the hindsight moments. Talk to us about the moments prior to you knowing that there was proof of molestation. Talk to us about the moments that led up to that you can now look back and say, wow, I realized this certain behavior was probably because my daughter was being molested by her father.
My daughter's behavior changed. It became very aggressive.
And she was the oldest daughter, correct? She was the oldest child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was.
Okay.
Her behavior became very, and this was back going to the age of 2. Her
Gotcha.
behavior started to change very drastically and very rapidly. She would, one time in particular that haunts me about all of this is that my mom would always tell me, nobody is to ever touch you. Nobody's to ever do this. She would just go down the list and tell me what were acceptable touches and what weren't, and tell me, things that would safeguard me just as a girl. And so I kind of took that type of parenting, so to speak, into my own motherhood. And I used to tell all of my children, but at this time I only had the one. I used to tell my daughter, we referred to her physical female part as being a private part, and we gave it just initials. So we would just say PP. And I would always tell her, nobody ever is to touch you in this place, with the exception of mommy and daddy, when you're taking your bath. Because at 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5, you're still bathing your children.
Of course.
And this was something that was just part of my routine. She's a girl. I wanted to keep my child safe. I wanted her to have boundaries. So I would tell her that. And one time in particular, I remember I had been at work and I came home and she was already in the bed. And I woke her up to go to the bathroom, and she went in the bathroom and she told me that it hurt, or, she was burning. And I was like, "Did you take your bath tonight?" And she said, "Yes." And I was like, "Well, did you get soap down there? Like, what's going on?" And she was so unsettled. And, I asked all the questions, and then I went back to her father and I asked him questions as well. And everything was just really downplayed and very nonchalant. And, um, eventually that went away. There were not any more episodes like that because I had told him, I said, "Listen, don't worry about bathing her. I'll give her baths." Apparently, she's not comfortable. I'm not comfortable. And I wasn't saying it in a way where at that time, because I didn't know, it wasn't something that ever even crossed my mind. I wasn't being accusatory. I was just being a mother, you know?
But why? Okay, so let me ask you this. Um, because, I myself, I have two daughters. And of course, they had a father who, bathed them when I wasn't available to do so, or even if I was available, that was daddy. And if he put them in the bath, or I put them in the bath, as long as they got bathed, it was good. But for you to say at that particular time, just don't worry about bathing her anymore, I will do it. You say that you didn't know, but do you think that there was some type of motherly instinct in you that probably in your inner man, some people would refer to, that was telling you that something wasn't right even back then? Or
I now in hindsight, I think so. I'm very intuitive now, but back then, of course, I was a lot younger. So it wasn't prevalent then, but hindsight, I'm still the same person. So I think the intuitiveness has always been there. I think it's just matured over the years. So I think that was just my gut safeguarding a situation that I was not aware of, and just wanting my child to be comfortable, and, just not knowing. And yeah.
sure. So talk to us just a little bit, if you don't mind, about the aggression, the signs that you saw in her.
Um, she would act out in school. She was in, I mean, she was 2. So we were at that time taking her to a daycare. It was a beautiful daycare. They had horses there. She could go out and ride horses. They had, ballet and all types of things there. And she just became very aggressive with the students, with the teachers. She would
Mm.
flip her desk over. She would fight with the teacher. She became very defiant. Um, and there really wasn't a specific
Reason why.
reason as to why my child was changing in that manner. She just started to be more aggressive and more erratic with her behavior.
Did she change? Did she start to change with you? Her relationship with you?
No, not at that time. That came later.
That came later. Wow. Okay. Um, you know what? I hate to do this to everyone. I really do. And I know that, this is a topic and this is a subject that is so incredibly sensitive. And, I sit here and I listen to you, Rose, and it takes everything in me to fight back the tears, uh, because I think that every mother, you know, has an innate, not only desire, but most times an ability to protect our young. It's just the way God made us. And I could not even begin to imagine, number one, how I would have handled what you had to deal with. And I can't begin to imagine mentally and emotionally how I would have suffered and probably may still be suffering to this day had that happened to me. And I can't begin to imagine how I would have reacted. I think until you're in that position, you just don't know. It's best just to say, just not to say, because you just don't know until it happens to you. But I so applaud your courage. You were so courageous to be coming out with your story. And I know that the reason you're coming out is to help other people. But so many people just can't muster up the courage and the strength to do what you're doing selflessly for other people. And I just want to say thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for
Thank
having
you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you about this publicly. Thank you for how you are going to bless and set free many, many people who are going through the same thing. And yeah, I'm in awe of your courage and your strength. And I'm going to stop the podcast at this point because I know that this is New Year's Eve and a lot of people have some wonderful things that they want to do with their friends and family. And also because next week, next Thursday at the same time, we are going to pick up where we left off. And we are going to talk about exclusively what happened with this father and their child. And we're going to talk about the progression, and we're going to talk about the things that led up to and the things that have happened as a result of this that we know of, what, 7-8 year relationship between a father and his daughter. So all that is going to be on the podcast next week as we continue the series of Married to a Molester. Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So
make sure, guys, that you tune in next Thursday. We'll pick up where we left off. Tell somebody about this podcast. Share it with as many people as you can. Happy New Year to everyone. We love you here at the Tisa Batey Show. You're relevant. You matter. See you next week.
yes.
On the Tisa Batey Show. Let's just talk about it. No pressure, just dialogue. On the Tisa Batey Show.